I'm Leandra from Forum Ventures. I'm excited to kick off this session with two incredible people. First, you'll hear from Dallas, who's part of our team here at Forum Ventures, and he's going to share how we think about building AI native startups from the very beginning, what that actually means, and what it looks like in practice at Forum. And then Martin from Make will take us through how early stage teams can use Make to build scalable automated systems from day one. And he'll do some live demos so you can take and use those skills immediately. You've already started using the chat, so great. We'll have time for questions at the end, but definitely feel free to start using the chat and we'll try to address questions as they come in or save them for later if it's more relevant for later. Without any further ado, I'm going to let Dallas share his screen and get started.
What's up, everybody? Super excited to get to chat with all of you today. This is a subject that's like near and dear to my heart at this point, which is building AI native startups or AI first startups. We're going to be here for about the next 75 minutes just chatting through building AI native startups. And then Martin's going to walk through some really cool workflows that he is developed. I'm super excited to be working with Make on this. So a little on me. I'm the head of venture building at Forum. I've been here for about 4 years now. I'm part of our studio team, which I'll get a little bit into as to what we actually do, but helped to launch 5 companies. All those 5 companies have raised venture capital. And I basically got to see what it looks like building a company over the last 4 years and how AI has impacted that build. So yeah, here's what we'll walk through over the next 75 minutes. I'm going to talk really as to like what AI first actually means and what it means today and what I think it'll mean a little bit into the future, and also like what that has meant in the past, how we build AI native companies. And then I'll also show an example of one of the companies that we're currently working on that I'd say is like building from like a very AI first lens. And then, yeah, Martin's going to show us some super cool workflows, some plug and play automations that you can start using today. So a little bit on Forum. We've existed for 12 years. We used to be very B2B SaaS focused. AI has changed that slightly where we're very B2B focused at this point. We have 3 investment vehicles. The studio is what I work on. We invest $250,000 at inception, and then we co-build with founders across. We have a team of developers, designers, and go-to-market to help founders go from that very early stage of idea all the way to seed. We have an accelerator, which invests in generally teams of companies or exceptional solo founders. We invest $100K at a pretty early stage, but generally a little bit more into like has an MVP built, maybe has some like early customers. And then we have a seed fund where we generally lead early stage rounds. This is for exceptional founders with really proven traction. So just to set the stage and like a little bit of context here, as I said, I've been at the studio for 4 years, so I can describe what our first build looked like and what our latest build has looked like. So the first build, we are very, very focused on customer discovery, getting design partners signed up, getting customer feedback, and that was amazing. And then once we had all that set up, we actually fundraised, and then we started building product. The process to actually build out the product required significant engineering and design resources. And ultimately, that first product took about 6-ish months before we really had like a real working product in the hands of customers. Fast forward to today, our latest build, that whole process, minus the fundraise, took 1 month. We went from the idea stage to the customer validation stage. Once we had the product validated and we're confident in what we were building, to actually write the code that it took for that product, it took 1 month and we've already onboarded customers. So this means a lot of things, but basically what it means is that like the funding landscape for venture capital has changed, and it's changing rapidly, because if what you're building can be built in a weekend, unless you have a massive competitive advantage around go-to-market, it's going to be very unlikely that you really have like a stable company and like a real moat as a company. So what that means is that we're getting excited about harder problems. This means that like more hardware is getting invested in, regulated industries, extremely complex technical products, redesigning how service firms works. This is all becoming fundable. Whereas we saw even 3 or 4 years ago, it was very difficult for these types of companies to get funded. And now this is like the cream of the crop of what we're seeing get funded. And then the bar keeps raising. I've been in the startup space for about 10 years. I'd say this is the point where things are moving the fastest, where even what was a hot company or a hot space 6 months ago can be completely cold at this point because one, there's a ton of competition. People are building products super quick. And just our view as to like where the world is going and how AI is changing that has been changing rapidly. So here's what AI first actually means. And there's kind of like two functions as to like what an AI first company means. One, which I think Martin's going to talk a little bit more about, and I'm not going to go super deep into, but is like as a company, is your operations AI first in every action that you're doing, whether that be accounting, finances, marketing, sales? Are you trying to build AI into these processes to automate as much as possible, do more, and ultimately become a more productive company? And then this is the lens that I'm going to talk a lot more about, which is your product AI first? Not just bolting AI onto your product or adding a couple AI features, but truly building an AI first product. So when we're talking about building AI or building AI products, the question has previously been like, how do I use AI to go faster? How do I use AI to automate a workflow? How do I use AI as a co-pilot to assist my workers? This is the wrong question today. The right question is what is now possible that wasn't previously possible with AI? And to have a comparison here, we have like our AI adjacent, which is like you have an existing workflow that you're looking at. You're looking to, speed up the process. You're adding in AI in some of those steps, and you're seeing incremental improvement. Maybe you have a workflow that's 5 or 6 steps, and it takes an hour, and you're like, hey, step 3, we can automate the majority of that work. Okay, great. Our new workflow now takes 45 minutes instead of an hour. Okay, that sounds great, and that is obviously an improvement. But when we're looking at AI native, what we're looking at is not what is the traditional workflow, but what can the workflow look like with AI? Redesigning what's possible. What can AI handle completely where we don't even need a human in the loop? And this is how we're actually going to create like a structural advantage in our company. And here's what I think is a really great example. We're going to look at customer success. So Zendesk is a company that's built in 2007. It's really for like larger customer success teams to manage how they respond to customer inquiries and customer problems. And it's basically like, a customer writes in their problem, it creates a ticket, it's queued to one of their agents, the agent responds, the ticket is closed. They're like, great, okay, here's our workflow. Again, it takes probably about an hour to like solve one of these problems. And they looked at that workflow and they're like, oh, what we can do is for how the agent responds, what we can do is an AI suggested reply. So it speeds up the process so they don't have to manually type out everything. And maybe instead of, this taking 15 minutes generally, we can now cut it down to like 1 or 2 minutes for most use cases. You're like, okay, this is great. This workflow is now like slightly more efficient. And, that was cool 3 years ago. But today, this is a sign that this is a company that is not going to survive AI. And here's an example of another customer success company that took it the completely opposite way, which is how does AI change what is possible? So Intercom, they were kind of a similar company to Zendesk around like solving customer inquiries and problems. And they were super AI native from the start. They actually launched one of the first like enterprise AI products, which was called Fin, which basically is an AI agent that resolves customer inquiries. So instead of that old workflow, what we're seeing is the message receives, Fin comes in and solves the problem, and then the human, only if needed, is the problem escalated to. So instead of saying, here's our hour workflow, now it's down to 45 minutes. What we're saying is, here's our hour workflow. It's now down to 0 minutes because Fin is solving the entire problem. And over time, that AI is obviously getting better. But right now, they're solving about 50% of customer problems without any human interaction. It's now basically a standalone product. They've actually kind of just like rebranded and focused the company as Fin. They recently raised $250 million, and they're really going up market and really gaining market share from a bunch of incumbents because they have the most AI native product that actually works. And then there's also a really interesting piece around their pricing, which I'll talk about in another slide. But yeah, basically, Zendesk is sitting here saying, how can we speed up this workflow? But when you're talking about your AI workflows, what you're really talking about is not what is the current process, but what is now currently feasible due to AI. So this is how we build AI native companies. Previously, it used to be, okay, we're building product. Our code is a proprietary mode. Something interesting right now is that I'm seeing a couple companies go through acquisition, and they have like fairly flushed out products at this point. However, in the acquisition process, nobody is actually overly interested in product because they have large teams of developers. They see that they could build this product not in something that used to take years or like entire quarterly cycles, but is now this is something that they could have a team work on over the course of a month and probably build something substantial with 4 or 5 developers. So it's really not that like code is your proprietary moat anymore. What can still be a proprietary moat though is like a deep workflow knowledge and like a really solid customer experience and data on top of that. So there's a law firm that recently decided they were going to build their own LLM and their own workflow tool. They're called Kirkland & Ellis. They're spending about $500 million, which is an insane amount of money, and most people could probably do it much more efficient. That's not the point. The point is that they have tons and tons of proprietary data to their company, and they can use that proprietary data to build models and to build workflows because they have that like really interesting data. And previously you would talk about building features to win the market. Now what we're seeing is building outcomes and owning relationships. So a great example of what we're calling like AI native service companies, where the idea isn't that you're building software to sell to a company so they can use it to serve their end customer. What we're seeing is that like we're just moving up stack and not even just delivering product, but delivering outcome. And this is like a great example of Finn, the customer success example I was talking about previously. They price not on a monthly basis or on a per seat basis. They price on a per customer inquiry resolved. So what they're saying is, hey, if we can't solve the problem, you don't pay us anything. But if we do solve the problem, then you pay. So the more that you can move into delivering an outcome, delivering a result, as opposed to just delivering a product, the more AI native you'll be, and the more moat and customer lock-in you'll have. And really, what we're seeing is a drastic improvement in time. We're not talking about year-long builds anymore. We're talking about how quickly can we get to revenue. And really, this comes down to defensibility. There's always been like a huge focus in the VC world and in startup world as to why can't somebody else come in and do this? And that used to, again, previously be stuff like code, a larger team, customer lock-in, all of these things. But what we're seeing is these are kind of the 3 pieces where we're actually seeing like real customer lock-in and like real moat being developed, which is workflow lock-in. Are you deeply embedded into how a customer works? You can still think of stuff like Salesforce as like a great example of this, but what we're seeing is a bunch of like regulated industries. This is becoming super common. Building tools into these regulated industries where, one, you have a bunch of domain expertise and product expertise, but 2, these are processes that need to function a certain way and can't have big mistakes. You could think of it as like if you're doing surgery and you're building software to prep doctors for that surgery, you can't be right 99% of the time. You need to be right 100% of the time. So they're not going to switch out workflow software, every couple months to try what's new. They're going to go through an extremely deep vetting process to figure out what is the best software or what is the best product. And then they're going to stay into that workflow. Again, I touched on the proprietary data example, and then again on the owning the outcome. And really what we're getting is like a shift in how companies are pricing as well. The previous world, what we saw is really people were just pricing on a per seat basis. So every new user who would come in the platform, you would charge a more nominal monthly fee to. And this worked great when tech companies were just like hiring a ton. You were selling into all of these companies that were growing rapidly. even if you weren't getting a ton of new customers, you're getting new users onto the platform anyway, and basically every year you'd be able to bill that customer more. What we're seeing is the complete opposite of that, where we're charging for outcomes. And part of the reason is that if AI really is making us more efficient, you don't really need to add more headcount. You could see like the example of Intercom. You come into an organization that has maybe 100 customer success staff. If you implement Fin, you should actually be able to reduce the amount of people within customer success, or at least shift what they're focusing on. But it's unlikely that you're going to start adding a bunch more customer success people when you have this AI, which is making you drastically more efficient in your customer success department. So we're no longer pricing around a per seat basis. What we're pricing around is stuff like outcomes and token usage. And that's really where this pricing unlock is, because really we're looking at two budgets. So if you look at the entire market for traditional software, it's about $500 billion per year is spent in the US on software. However, if you look at labor budgets, labor is about a $6 trillion, $7 trillion market, white collar labor. So within within IT budgets, you can only charge so much because there's only so much budget. Versus on the labor budget side, there is way more. First of all, people are expensive, and there's way more room to eat into that labor budget and increase how much you're basically charging on a per customer basis. So again, if you're looking at that like IT budget and you're charging per seat, maybe you can get up to, a $15,000 ACV for strictly software. Whereas on the labor budget side, let's say you're taking a team down from 10 people to 7 people, or maybe as they're growing rapidly, they just don't need to hire as much. You're saving maybe $100K per role. So now what you're doing is you're charging maybe 10 to 20K per role that you're reducing and hiring, and ultimately the amount that you can end up charging for your software is drastically increased, but it has to be tied to outcomes. And then what I think is the most interesting part about AI is not in actually replacing people. I think this is how most people are selling software currently, is that like, hey, you have a team of 10 people, we can cut it down to 7. But when you actually really dive into most companies and most functions as to how they're operating, they're actually just not doing a great job because they don't have the correct tools and the correct people to ultimately service those functions. So a good example, Credit Pulse was one of the companies we started out of Forum. Basically, they work with like mid-sized manufacturers on analyzing trade credit they've extended. So for example, if you're a tile manufacturer and you're selling to a bunch of general contractors, you don't actually sell them and get money up front. You basically give them an amount of trade credit. They go get the tile from you, they install that, and then they eventually get paid, and then it works back up the cycle. And what our first thesis was okay, you have a team of 10 credit analysts. With us, you can cut 2, you save 150 grand, that's cool. But what we really realized was that all of these credit departments were supposed to look at all of these accounts on a yearly basis, but that wasn't possible. If you had 5,000 accounts and you have 10 people, or you have 5 people, that's 1,000 accounts per person. That is all they would be doing. That was impossible. And what we saw is that maybe they would look at a couple accounts a year. And what that led to was bankruptcies. And those bankruptcies were giant write-offs, $1 million plus write-offs a year. So what Credit Pulse is now selling is not, hey, we can help you reduce staff. What they're really selling is, hey, we can help you reduce these giant bad debt write-offs that you're getting by continuously monitoring your accounts on a not yearly basis, but on a per second basis, where they're looking at each of these accounts every single day, flagging the accounts that are issues, and then having human involvement to review those accounts to see whether they want to continue extending credit or not. So what it is doing is it's making something that was previously infeasible without AI now feasible. And the idea is that you're not saving some amount of labor. What you're doing is reducing these really bad debt write-offs. This is just like a little bit on how the process works. Basically, you want to identify still the workflow. You want to validate the outcome though. How are they measuring success? Again, like what does the end solution look like? Start human in the loop is one of the really interesting things we're seeing with AI companies. Is previously with SaaS, it was we want no humans in the loop ever. Services was frowned upon. Now you can basically look at a workflow, put in humans where humans need to be, but then automate as much around it as possible, and ultimately reduce the amount of people in the loop over time, and ultimately automate more, increasing margin. And then over time, the big piece is locking in with data. And then I'm going to give one more example here, a company called Shepherd, which I've been spending basically the last year on. And what we are is an AI native law firm. So if you look at the traditional legal process, how it would work is your client would have a need, they would email their lawyer, the lawyer would ask for some context, you'd have a bunch of back and forth where they're like trying to get more context, you're like, okay, cool. The lawyer then by hand drafts out a contract, they send it to the sales team has a bunch of revisions, then it gets signed. Great. That's kind of the current process, and you could totally see like an old AI native company looking at one of these things, maybe drafting and being like, hey, we can automate that, and that's cool, and that would improve the workflow. But what we're trying to do is be proactive, so not even have these triggers of emailing your lawyer where you're not even like identifying the need, you don't have your lawyer ask for a bunch of information. What we're doing is what we're calling proactive law. So the system is identifying triggers, the draft is already getting created, and then the lawyer is just refining and improving it and ultimately setting strategy. So a great example of this is a deal gets closed. Your sales team is going to need a contract to send to the prospect. So the old way, the deal gets closed, the AE emails legal, asks for a contract. The lawyer is going to ask for a bunch of terms, company info. The AE is going to dig through a bunch of stuff, email the client, get all the information, send all that information to the lawyer. The lawyer is going to draft it. Then it gets sent back to the sales team. They review it. The client reviews it. Great. It gets signed. It takes like 2 to 3 weeks. But hey, okay, we got a customer. Great. The Shepherd way is let's say you're using HubSpot, you move a deal to closed won. What automatically happens is Shepherd detects that customer is going to need a contract. So it's going to pull all the CRM data, all the call recordings, your playbook on how you develop contracts. That is going to draft the first version of the agreement. That agreement is then going to be sent to a lawyer. The lawyer still needs to review it, make sure that it's good, make sure that there's not any, real big issues. Then that gets sent out to the client signs, great. And basically you're taking this 2-week process down to a single day with minimal human involvement, and ultimately you really alleviate this back and forth and the entire waste that happens in that process. So this is, I think, like a really good example of how you can build an AI product from the ground up as opposed to just bolting AI on. So yeah, basically what we're doing is we're taking this deal cycle down from weeks to the same day. You're not having lawyers having to draft these giant agreements. It's already getting created, and then it's done by a trigger, not having somebody needing to email their lawyer. And ultimately, this is going to reduce errors in the process and ultimately speed up the entire process. So that's the end of really my presentation. Here's what the 4 things that I really want everybody to take away, which is ask what's possible, not just how do we get faster. I think from like a societal point of view, I think if all we're doing is we're automating stuff and making things slightly more fast, I think we really missed the opportunity on AI. I think with AI, the goal is to dream big as to what is now feasible that was not previously feasible and go build that. Design for the outcome, not for the feature. So don't just think about your product as a bunch of features. Figure out what the end customer is actually trying to solve and figure out how AI can get you as close to that end result as possible. So your work, and then the third point, your mode is going to be in workflow and data and customer lock-in and owning those outcomes, not just in writing code. And then finally, the more you can work into labor budgets as opposed to IT budgets, the more you're going to be aligned for where the world is going, what VCs are looking for, and ultimately what I think are going to be the biggest companies that are created. So that's the end of what I'm talking about. Martin, happy to pass to you.
Thank you so much for coming on to this webinar. I've been honestly very excited for your part because this is the first time that we're doing this type of session with a VC and with somebody who works with startups really in depth. We focus on the foundations of AI and AI first quite a lot. And normally we take the perspective of what we see happening like within Make, our internal experience, and also what we see the startups in our program doing. This is what I'm going to be focusing on, but having this and all the things that you shared, I think complement this session amazingly. So once again, everyone, welcome to today's session. In this part, I'm going to be focusing on something slightly different than to what Dallas has already covered. I'm going to be focusing on the foundations of an AI first startup, but more from the operational perspective and how you can do this within your company today, what sort of frameworks you could be using. And then at the end, I'm also going to be presenting a specific use case that is inspired by one of the startups that is from our startup program. So without further ado, my name is Martin. I manage our startup program here at Make, and I've been at the company for over 2 years now. I also serve as a mentor at Station F in Paris. It is the largest startup hub in the world. So I get to work with the founders in the AI space pretty much on daily basis. And I manage our mentorship office here. So I get a lot of exposure to what's happening in the startups industry as well. What my job pretty much entails is working with startups, helping them to leverage AI, automation, and also to work with cool VCs like Forum. So feel free to connect. I'm super curious about what you're building. If you have something cool, and if I can help you in any way, absolutely let me know. So in case you're not familiar with Make, I'm going to try to be very practical. And I would describe it as an AI automation platform that you can use without any coding. You can build AI agents, but also regular deterministic workflows. It's a platform that you would call an integration tool. So it integrates into different softwares and different tools. It brings them into one place so you can then build the automations yourself. A great thing about it is that there's over 3,500 native integrations that you can directly connect to. But if that's not the case, you can always use an external API. So it gives you all the flexibility in the world that you might need to become an AI first or AI native company. And one thing that surprises a lot of people when I tell them about Make is that Make has been in the space for over a decade now. And for us, we started as a regular automation platform, but the AI introduced a new tempo for us. And this was not only on the side of our product, nor only on the side of us internally, what we do day to day and how we become AI powered, but specifically to what we see the companies using Make and using AI achieving. As I've been working with startups over the past 3 years in total now, I've seen this, what I like to call the rise of the ultra lean startup. And on this graph, you can see how long it took each of these companies to reach $100 million in annual recurring revenue. And one clearly stands out, that is Lovable. I'm sure you all know Lovable. What I would expect is in the next few, to be conservative, I would say years, but honestly, I think this could be months. There is going to be a company that's going to absolutely demolish this record from Lovable, but that doesn't take away anything from Lovable. It's still an amazing company, and it's a bit of an inspiration to what we're trying to install in the new generation of startups. So a bit about Lovable. We've done a lot of examples of different companies here, but I think this one deserves a little bit of spotlight. So founded in 2023, they've just announced that they have over $500 million in annual recurring revenue, and they have not even 200 people. So their ARR per headcount is extremely high. And I really wanted to study how they do this. And I'm lucky enough that being based at Station F, I get to know some people from Lovable personally, and I got to speak to them, to do some sessions with them. And what I wanted to share with you later on in the session is how they've done it and how you can implement it into your businesses as well. So we've not only seen this in companies like Lovable, but I wanted to also share with you a few examples from our startup program. And in my eyes, the startup game has changed drastically. You can take an example of, for example, Sarah, who is a solopreneur, and she runs an e-commerce store for marathon runners. She's a former marathon runner. She's not a business person. She's absolutely not a technical individual, but Make actually helps her to run the operations for the business. So what was previously not really possible for her not to run the operations without pretty much any intervention, to do customer support, finance, or invoicing. This is all that she can do without pretty much any intervention while running the business and taking care of the personal things. So this is one of the examples that we had initially from our startup program. But my favorite one is from a company called Auditsu and from a person called Jason. And we've been in touch with Jason for a few months now. And Jason runs a startup, or has a product in the auditing space in the UK. So I guess you can call it an legal space, a legal tech. And he has a product that is very capital heavy to build. So he's not a serial founder. He didn't have any previous traction or anything to really put on the table when he was speaking to VCs. But he was actually able to convince or to get the VCs to invest into his product simply based on his advanced go-to-market system that he has built on Make. It looked something like this. This is just like an example, or like the bird's eye view of the systems. It's been 18 different automations that pretty much told the investors how he's going to be targeting the people and getting to the clients and delivering the results that he actually promised with the product. This kind of made me realize how much the space is currently changing. And as we spoke, I really wanted to get inspired by what he was doing. And in this case, I would like to present to you a framework that I've been preaching for a while now, and it's been slightly adjusted. So I wanted to present this one to you. So how do you build AI-powered systems? The AIR framework for literally anything that you're doing within your business, or maybe even in your day, starts with an audit. So examining and mapping out one critical process of your daily routine. This one can start very simply. You don't need to use very sophisticated tools. You can be very old school, and you can use literally a whiteboard if you're this type of person. Nothing wrong with that. I have a whiteboard literally in front of me, and it's completely covered in some sort of maps as well. But if you would like to take it maybe a step further, I would recommend maybe tools like Miro. This is a collaborative tool that you can pretty much use to map out processes and even think about how you would be redesigning them. But my current favorite way of how you can do this and how you actually can use AI to put this into a completely different level is by using Claude Cowork or even Claude Code. And what you can do is that you can literally describe how you are running the process step by step from one moment to the last. And then you can ask it to visualize this process, flag some specific moments or bottlenecks that could be automated in a very easy way. Ideally, what I would encourage you to do is to also ask the AI, present your objective and ask whether it should be done in this way and whether it shouldn't be completely redesigned. So when you're going to be doing this and when you're going to identify these bottlenecks, it's always extremely important for you to also note down how this process looks like and how it's going to look like in the future. How you can do this is very easily by using Claude Cowork and Obsidian, for example. Obsidian is living in your desktop, and you can use it to pretty much map out processes and take notes, so everything is nice and in one place. Or if you're collaborating with your team, you can use a cloud-based solution like Notion. So just make sure that every single process that you're currently running is somehow documented. This is going to be very important, and I'm going to talk about this a bit later in this framework. So the second part of this framework, after you've audited one critical process of your routine, is to, of course, improve this. And you can leverage AI for this, as I mentioned, but I have this process-focused matrix where what you can do is that with every single process that you have, or with every single task, you can place them into this matrix to see what actually makes the most sense to focus on right now. And how you're going to do this is that you're going to measure it in terms of the impact to complexity. So if it's low impact, low complexity, it's of course, it's a nice to have. It's not going to transform your business, and it's not going to really take too much of your time. If it's high complexity and low impact, you should, of course, deprioritize this completely. High complexity and high impact, these are the long-term projects, and you should always keep this in mind. Work on them gradually, but likely do not spend too much of your current time on this, because what you should start with, if you haven't really started with automating your processes or improving your processes with AI, is the quick wins. And the quick wins are the highest impact and lowest complexity processes. You can prompt AI to think in this matrix and place these processes into this matrix. And some examples that I see very often with startups are, for example, sales outreach, customer care, invoicing. Like, these are the recurring ones that are kind of common between a lot of businesses, but it's going to be always extremely individual to what you are currently building. One thing that I've noticed by using this myself is that many times, actually, I go and build a backbone to a process, and it's sort of a nice to have. I think of this sort of as something not super complex, producing some sort of impact, but over time, as I spend a bit more time on this, it might actually shift into a quick win or like a really solid long-term project that can deliver value as well. And this also plays into the narrative of you redesigning your processes with AI currently. You should always start with something simple, some sort of backbone that's going to sort of deliver the MVP or like the actual objective of that process. And when you're going to be scaling it, you might realize that it might fully replace that process eventually. So the last step of the process, or the sort of like the second last step, is reinforce the improvement. After you've built out the backbone, you will be introducing more tools, more complexity into it. So this can be, for example, by doing multi-agent systems, or even having more complex evaluation loops with your agents. There's many ways how you can do this in very specific processes. But one more part of this AIR framework, so an additional R that I would like to really emphasize with becoming an AI first startup, is record. And Dallas also mentioned that proprietary data is going to be, or is, the mode for the current successful businesses. And I would like to absolutely support this and emphasize pretty much every single business and every single person that is somehow using AI or redesigning their processes to record as much as possible, because this is going to become the context and also the sort of a value that you can then leverage later on. So this can start very simply, and this is a very simple use case that you can build on Make or even use with Claude Code. You can take your emails, save attachments into your drive, and create a record in Google Sheets. And you might be thinking like, okay, this is incredibly straightforward and simple. Why should I actually do this? I would like to put this into a perspective of AI agents and why it's actually necessary. So if you look into AI agents, something that we're going to get into in our next session, AI agents are consisting of the AI, so the brain, which is the LLM, then the context, so the access and the knowledge that the AI agent has, and also the tools. So these are the actions, or we can call them the hands, that the AI agent can leverage in order to get the job done. And each of these three components are essential. And what you're doing with this very simple backbone is that you're creating both additional context and also a tool that the AI agent might be using sometime in the future. Because when you look at automation in general, or AI agents, we think of them in terms of a spectrum. So this is the extent to which sort of generative AI determines the behavior of the process. So on the left side, we would have the fully deterministic ones, and these are your regular automated workflows or workflow automation. This is if this, then that. So not very much fuzzy logic, but this can also produce a ton of value for you. In the middle, we have more non-deterministic. So these are the workflows that bring AI to the business. This is where you do some sort of data transformation or some generation with LLMs, for example. And lastly, on the other side of the spectrum, we have the agentic automation or the AI agents. And these are non-deterministic, pretty much almost fully autonomous tools that you can use for automation. Now, one does not go necessarily against the other. They're much more complementary. And I would like to show you in action how a startup from our startup program, specifically Jason, has done this for some of his use cases. So I mentioned that sales is one of those areas in business that can be likely automated to a very big extent for a lot of different businesses. And in this one, we're going to be looking into enrichment and personalization at scale. And this specific use case is lead enrichment and outreach that is using an AI agent to take information about a specific business, then look for a phone number, email address, and then also generating a personalized message. And this is in one very simple use case that can be scaled up or even down depending on your needs. What you can do is that you can scan this QR code, and a template for this specific use case is available for you to put into your Make organization. So you can directly go at this. And if you're using HubSpot, then you can pretty much directly go ahead and do this. If you're using any other CRM, feel free to exchange these HubSpot modules. So what I'm going to do right now is that I'm going to go into this specific scenario, as we call them in Make, and describe to you how this works, tell you a little bit how Make functions, and also why I'm doing this in the first place. So I have this demo database here, and this one contains the name of the company, LinkedIn profile, website, description, and location. And these are some of the companies that I created for this demo. I have several of these demo databases. And a few things that are missing here is some contact information and a personalized message for them based on my context and the company that I'm personally working for. How this works, once again, is that this automation is triggered by me searching rows or taking the data from Google Sheets. There are several different ways how you can trigger an automation in Make. This one specifically makes sense for me to trigger on demand. How this works, I'm going to connect to my Google Sheets account or to my Google account. I'm going to select the spreadsheet that I'm going to be looking into. In this one, it's this demo base. And then what I can do is that I can also filter via specific, let's say, descriptions or emails or anything that's available pretty much within the sheet. What I want to do then is that I want to go into my CRM and actually check whether this account already exists in the CRM, because I'm going to be using a CRM to pretty much keep track of course, all the deals that I have, or let's say the partnerships, or even if you're doing funding, it's also useful to have an overview of different investors, for example. How this works is that I connect it to my HubSpot account. What I want is to select an output property. So as you know, CRM has many different variables, and I'm personally only interested in the lead status. So I'm going to be selecting a lead status, and the query is simply for me going to be the name of the company. I'm going to click on save, and here I added a filter that the lead status cannot be unqualified, because if it's unqualified, I probably do not really need to reach out to it again, and maybe they also don't want me to reach out to them. Before I start this whole automation, I'm going to quickly show you that this is the CRM that I have. The last edition was on the 5th of May, so there is nothing in here currently. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to be working with this for this specific automation. Now we get into the exciting part, which is the AI agents. And I want to show you how AI agents work specifically in Make and how you can leverage them for any use cases that you deem to be good for AI agents. So AI agents in Make work in a way that you firstly connect to your LLM provider. This is the AI or the brain of the AI agent, and you can choose pretty much any LLM that is available. You will use your API key, and you will then select what sort of LLM or which model you want to choose. Then you can specify once again which model you want to do this with, and you can also modify the reasoning effort. The reasoning effort, depending on the complexity of the task, is going to also adjust the amount of tokens this is going to be burning. What I'm going to do then is that I'm going to give AI agents instructions, which is the prompt that you would normally put into an LLM. But with the AI agent, you always need to be more specific with everything that it's supposed to be doing and what sort of output it should be producing for you. So I've tried to be a very specific and detailed on what I actually want this to do and what I want from it. A great thing about what you can do in Make is that you can pull the data from Google Sheets directly into the AI agent like this, and you pretty much give it up-to-date information every single time you're going to pull out some data from Google Sheets. So on one hand, we have the prompt, and on the other hand, we have the input data. It's always good to specify, just so you put more context into the AI agent. Talking about the context, if it's coming from a conversation, you can take a conversation ID and allow it to have context about the whole conversation that you've had, for example, on email or on WhatsApp. One additional thing that I want to mention, this is hidden sort of in the advanced settings, but it's something that I always recommend. And if you've ever worked with AI agents, you know that you might run it a few times, and every single time there might be a completely different output or an outcome. This is also likely because your prompt is not fully dialed in, but the AI agent sometimes is just not standardized. So having a standardized output, especially for automations, is going to be extremely important. And you can do this in Make very easily. You're going to select the data structure, and you will specify what variables you want to get out of this AI agent. So I'm interested in the email address that I described here for the AI agent, then the personalized message, also the reasoning, just so I know how I was thinking about the whole process. Then I'm interested in the phone number and the contact name, just so I can put the name of the contact into my CRM. So I'm still keeping it very simple, but you can, of course, specify anything that you need from this agent. How the agent works is the last step, context, and the tools. So I've given the AI agent the context via what we call agent knowledge. And what you can do here is that you can upload PDFs, CSV files, Excel sheets with additional information that you will just simply describe, and the AI agent will have access to this to then produce a more up-to-date or accurate response. Additionally, also, AI agent has access to a specific tool. This one, I used the AI web search, which is sort of like an enhanced web search that you can think of this more like, let's say, Perplexity, where the input text is going to be fully decided by the AI agent. I can do this pretty much anytime I want, or if it's something specific, I can just type in the prompt myself. But since in this case, this is going to be variable to each company, I'm going to let the AI agent decide. So I'm introducing a bit more autonomy to the AI agent. Lastly, this tool is actually another automated process. And this is something that I already mentioned before, but this one specifically is using Zoom info to further enrich the company information. And the AI agent has access to this tool. So whenever it needs it, it can go into it, run specific data through it, search companies, and enrich specific contact in those companies. And I use this array aggregator simply to choose what specific fields I'm interested in to then send back to the AI agent. So what's going to be happening then after this AI agent has done its work? I'm going to quickly run through this. This is simply updating the CRM. So if the company already exists, or it doesn't exist, it's going to create the company. If it exists, it's going to update the company, then create contact, create association from the contact to the company, and then it's going to add a small note to the contact with the personalized message. Hopefully I didn't lose you along the way, because what I'm going to do right now is that I'm going to run this AI agent, and I'm going to be showing you how this works in Make when something actually runs. So for this one, the company that we're going to be working with today is HubSpot, actually. And we got the name of the company, the LinkedIn profile, description, location as well. And let's see what's been happening in here. So when it searched in the CRM, we can see that the total number of bundles is 0. So it didn't find any record of HubSpot in our CRM. And now into the AI agent. So make AI agents work in a way that I would like to call a glass box. So you can exactly see what's going on and how the agent thinks, reasons, and also what tools it's using. So the instructions or the prompt is visible over here. Then here are the input information. And here's also the reasoning. So you can then audit exactly how the agent went through the process, what sort of tool it used. So it went to the agent knowledge, search the context through the AI web search, and then also use the enrichment tool. So I can see over here that it created the company in the CRM. And before I dive into this, I'm going to quickly check whether that's been the case. And okay, I see that it's just been added. It's 5:56 for me here in Europe, so that's nice. I even have the phone number in here, which is amazing. And I'm going to go into this record, and I'm going to see what exactly happened here. So okay, this is the company in the CRM. And if you want to scale this a bit further, you can even ask for like more information from the AI agent to find, let's say, a specific street, postal code, whatever thing you're interested in. The power is in your hands. And in this one, I can see that it found this person or the leader of the HubSpot team, I'm assuming. We're going to look into the reasoning as well. And this seems like more of a generic email address. So let's actually see how it was thinking about this specific outcome. So if I go here and I switch from reasoning to output, I'll be able to go into this. And here I see the email address, message. This is the message that it's been generating for Make and HubSpot collaboration. This is the objective that I gave to the AI agent. And the reasoning was no verified direct executive of partnership email was found. Okay, so with this information, what I could do is then either introduce more tools or prompt the AI agent to look in different directions or in different sources. It really always depends, and it's really important for you to always know how the AI agent was thinking about the process and how you can then improve it further after. So I'm thinking whether I forgot something specific, but I believe that that's primarily everything. And the last thing that happened in here, just really quickly, I also wanted this to update the source sheet, which is this one. So I can see that the email address was added in here. And over here, I even have the personalized message. And right now, I didn't want to send the email for obvious reasons. But if I would like to do that, one thing that I would do is that I would simply go into here, choose Gmail or any email provider that you have in your company or personally, and ask it to send an email address or send an email, or you can draft it as well, depending on you. And then you can scale the process, let's say, a bit further. So this was sort of like a backbone of the enrichment and outreach agent process. If anybody would have any questions about this, we can go back. I can show you how you can either modify this or build something completely different. I've been talking for a while now, so I think at this point I would like to maybe open it up a little bit, give a word also back to Dallas. Maybe if Dallas has some questions as well, he can ask too. But I hope that it's been clear, and yeah, we can, I guess, open it up. Hi.
So I think Andrea had a question around marketing and distribution. So just going to read this. Martin, would love to get your perspective on it too. But what are the considerations we need to make in an AI era, considering now anyone can create a product, yet the narrative and your ability to distribute seems to matter more. So I'd say like there's kind of two answers to this question in my perspective. My general view on it is build products in much less competitive markets or products that don't need to rely on against winning in like super intense competition. I'd say like the main companies and like products that we're building are in markets where there is like a deep domain expertise or like an amount of like industry like niche knowledge. So I would focus on like products that like that side of things is probably like slightly less important, and you can run like a normal outreach process. How we basically run our go to market process is the core of it is cold outreach. We've always like automated a lot of like list building and message writing and like automating that messaging, but what we're trying to do is basically bring on like 3 to 5 early design partners. So we focus a lot less in the early stages on how do we hack marketing and distribution, and more how do we find the right fit customers, clearly present the value of partnering with us and building this product and how it'll impact their business, and then basically like going through a sales process. But I'd say if you're in like a more highly competitive industry, like stuff like sales and marketing tools, or like stuff that is just like a much more competitive industry, um, the core of what you're going to have to do is, yes, outcompete on go to market, and that's like your attention and virality. So obviously like every product and niche is like slightly different, but I think some of the stuff that like we're seeing work really well is like hacking like search engine optimization, or like in this case like generative engine optimization. TikTok and LinkedIn are like still working like extremely well for those types of products ads, and then also like freemium products I see is like doing really well. This is how Lovable grew like so rapidly, is they basically just like gave away the early part of the product as like a freemium tool, where you could sign up, use it, and the product was just so good. And we're kind of calling that like compute as marketing, where basically the idea is that you give away a part of the product for free, people use it, and it's your lowest customer acquisition cost because the product is so good. For example, I was using Whisperflow. It's basically like a dictation software where you just like hold down a key. I don't even really type anymore. I just like basically talk to my laptop, and I used it for like 30 minutes and like immediately signed up for Pro because the product is sick. That's kind of my thoughts. Martin, I don't know if you've got any thoughts.
Yeah, on the side of the Whisper Flow, I'm in the same boat. I'm the top 0.1% of users right now. So
No way, really? Good for
yeah,
you.
not a big fan of typing. I don't know. It's just I have this. I like to think that my brain is faster than my hands, so I usually just talk and prompt or write emails, pretty much in the way that I'm speaking. But on the side of distribution, how we see this being in a space that's AI automation, which is extremely highly competitive at this point, is that the distribution is in most cases going to be the leveraging factor, and that's because it's, in my opinion, really saturated in most of the markets that are somehow impacted by AI. And if the people get to your product first, if they get to know about it, if they see how they can achieve the desirable outcome with you, either faster, better, or cheaper, then that's going to be the deciding factor for them. The product is something that is, of course, going to be the leveraging factor for them to stay as well, to extend the customer lifetime value. But when it comes to distribution, like one specific company that I see as a very clear example of this is Monday.com. They at one point spent, I believe this was 18% of their revenue, annual recurring revenue, in marketing, which is brutal. It's not their profit, it was their revenue. And they spent this pretty much only on distribution. And right now they get into a point where, I mean, you've probably seen their stock. It's not really performing super well. So now the product is going to be much more important. And they also need to then redistribute it in a very strategic way. So in practical ways, this would be, of course, a bit more complicated, but this is sort of my take on it.
For sure. And also, yeah, if you have any questions, just like feel free to drop them in the chat. It's like the next question is from Nick here. Would you advise against trying to take on incumbents that aren't being so AI savvy, even if they already have a pretty strong customer base? No, I'd recommend definitely taking them on. I think that's where there's like this like true unlock now, is basically selling, hey, here's what the existing incumbent does, but it's not AI native. And especially like workflows that you can like completely redesign from an AI first lens. For example, like the intercom and Zendesk example that I had previously used. Let's say there wasn't intercom doing what they said they were going to do. You see a bunch of companies, I guess, starting up like Decagon and Sierra, which are taking that on. But if you're seeing a bunch of incumbents just bolt on slight amounts of AI, because it's really difficult. Like it's actually like a very difficult process to like take your existing product and not just completely change it, and build it from that AI first lens. Because obviously you have existing customers that have built this tool into their workflows and utilize it. So at that point, you almost need to build like two separate products. And that's where I think there's a huge opportunity, is that like most companies are not going to build two separate products. They're just going to bolt AI onto their existing product. And you coming in with that AI first lens from the ground up, being like, we can redesign this entire product and workflow to be more AI centric or to be completely AI centric. I actually think that's where kind of there's a huge opportunity.
That was a really good question, by the way. Something that I'm kind of seeing and talking about quite frequently as well. We could lead like a whole conversation on this, but one thing that I'm just noticing as well is that there is not really such thing as a loyalty to a specific software at this point. Like people are so quick to switch if something just makes more sense. So that's why delivering the outcome in the best, cheapest, or fastest way is going to be paramount for this. So,
and then Christina had a question. I guess this is from Martin. This feels more like automation and agentic automation. What's the leap to true AI first company design? That's interesting. Like, I guess like Make is very like workflow centric, and I mean you can do it for both your product with end customers and like internal operations. But like, what's some of the I'm gonna change the question slightly. But Martin, what's like some of the crazy stuff you're seeing people do within Make that is, not simple workflow automation, but like actually helping them build AI first companies?
wow. Whew. Really good question. Wow, I could point to several of our enterprise examples, I believe. I work specifically with startups, so this is a bit of a tougher one. I can maybe have an answer like directly from our startup program, for example. Like I see
Yeah.
this also like sort of a product in and of itself. And what we built on the startup program is an agentic workflow, or just an AI agent that is pretty much doing the full end-to-end process of screening the company, checking whether the company already applied, whether it's a paying customer or not. It's checking if it's a right fit for the startup program, and then also it's distributing the whole deal for them. Then if the decision was incorrect, we also have another agent that is then able to rerun the process. So we sort of completely put this off of our hands. And maybe a bit more to the question of Christina. So automation and agentic automation, or like AI in general, is always going to be a massive part of processes and automation in general. Because if you think about like literally anything that you're doing with your business, there is always a process to it. And AI is always going to be connected to some sort of process. And in my opinion, and one thing that we see in Make as well, is that actually not every single process needs AI inherently. And an example for this would, for example, be, let's say, refund distribution. Would you trust AI to distribute refunds to your customers? To let it like take all the information from the invoice, everything, and also take the money from your account and put it somewhere else? This is something where when I speak to people, they are like, okay, I probably wouldn't trust it, at least yet. So there is still a lot of value to be taken from even regular workflow automations. And where it makes sense, that's when you should be implementing AI or even AI agents. So in the next session that we're going to be doing, we're going to be focusing more on AI agents. And also we're going to be very clearly talking about like, when should you be using them? When do they bring more value? And how to think about like actually implementing them to get the best bang for your buck.
Scott, say I want to sell a graphic T-shirt. How does the AI first work for me? Oh, physical products. That's a really good question. So I think like in watching Martin's presentation, what I got really excited about was that like you can automate. You have like a business that creates t-shirts. Like, okay, so there's a million different things that you probably do on like a daily basis to do that.
Wow.
And some of that will just be like simple workflow automation to like improve, margins and improvement. That might be like, helping you handle customer inquiries, or that might be you talking to distributors, or that might be, hey, I get some of my like first designs from AI and then I like work them through. Like,
Wow,
there's a million different ways that AI can work into your business. I mean, there's not like an AI first t-shirt yet. Like, so I think like, yes, the physical product that you're selling is still going to be the physical product, but like you can think about improving your customer experience, utilizing AI. That might be like helping them try on to see how things fit before they buy, or doing unique customizations that are only possible with AI, or just like improving the overall customer experience. So I think like the physical product is what you're selling is still going to be the physical product, but yeah, I say it's a little different in that situation, when your core product is physical. Cool. I think that's kind of all the core questions.
Thank you all for joining and for bearing with us through the technical issues. But we're super excited to continue this series for part 2. I put the link in the chat if you'd like to RSVP there. We'll also follow up with an email with the recording as well as a link to the next session. But thank you so much, Dallas, for sharing how AI native startups work. To Martin, who's not here, thank you for walking us through Make. And to all of you who are in the audience and joining us, thank you so much for being with us. Have a great day.
So